Back again, this is SETHIKUS BOZA, blackearthproductions, and right now I'm speaking with Laura Leon and Evie Lorgan, two women that I have respect for in this field of research and study and practice. I invited them on because both have great insight to what is actually going on, and I would like to welcome you both to Black Earth Productions.
Thanks for having us, Seth. I think that we're going to be getting into an array of things today.
Yep. Me and Mother Earth are doing well, getting thunderstorms ahead, so that's why. But I'm hanging in there, and I'm interested in this conversation. I think it's relevant, and hopefully we'll have a lot to share between us on our perspectives of how this can benefit others with our understanding of how things are going and the bad things, the good things, and what we can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly changing and evolving, I suppose.
Awesome. So what are some of the things that both of you see happening right now in context to the dark factions specifically? Getting into the AI agenda, a lot of people want to be in denial of it in context to the AI gods, the dark gods. I call them the dark gods.
I could start with a more fundamental way of describing artificial intelligence, the algorithmic biases and discrimination that is responsible for artificial intelligence being implemented in a lot of computer algorithm and systems and bureaucracies, where major decisions are made in each of our lives in a certain way that have to do with some kind of algorithm that's been created by people who are given orders to do things for some kind of statistical accuracy. But what's actually happening, even on a very simple level, on a fundamental level that can be proven, but people don't know anything about the occult aspects of AI, is that there's definite biases and discrimination that takes place, especially racial discrimination, especially against women and people who may have disabilities or who don't fall into what I call the bell curve of what, let's say, the powers that be want us to be in order to control us more easily or define us more easily. So that's actually happening and can be proven very, very simply with things like facial recognition software and simple things like that, or people who've been biased out of being able to get a job where they can continually sifted out because of one thing or another that's on this algorithmic program that basically jerks them out of the program so they're not even considered for a job, even though they may be not only qualified, but overqualified. And this happens on a regular basis, and it's not just economics. There is a bias kind of going on, and that this bias is being more and more controlled through more and more sophisticated algorithms. It's been proven to be dangerous on many levels, even from a simple fundamental level. But when we take it to the next step up in terms of 4G and 5G and what's happening with what is AI on this occult level and the kind of things that are in our environment, even from a scientific level that has been talked about, let's say, by people like Harold Kautz-Vella and some of the people doing research on the nanobots and the chemtrails and the heavy metal substitutions and the smart dust effects of this artificial intelligence. Because there are definite effects and there can be scientific proof of these things. So I just want to let it be known on a fundamental level that these things can be proven on how this is being used to control consciousness, as well as the decisions being made in each of our lives, really, really fundamental, important decisions that take away from the human element of compassion and interrelationship naturalness. Instead of just being able to have a friend who knows you, can help you get a job or help you out in a rough time in your life, or just getting to know people, instead of the human interaction where love is the main component, love and empathy and understanding and naturalness, that's being overridden by algorithm programs and artificial social systems, so that this humanness of connection and naturalness is being eliminated from our reality, and that is very dangerous.
The original algorithm that began is the data of your birth. So the data of your blood and the data of your birth details is your first algorithm. All the social governing system bodies come right in, and then your life. It actually directs you to certain things in a way that is controlled.
Programmed fate.
And programmed, right. Only people don't realize it in terms of putting it in a way that AI was starting. in this cycle, right? Because there's been previous cycles. It's under the illusion of freedom. Okay, so that's the beginning. Now these systems have become sophisticated over time with the server upgrades. And ultimately what we are seeing with AI and the metal god is that where we are right now is a interface invasion. So the stage needed to be set up in such a way that the advancements could happen along with the catastrophes in order to insert us into a much more sophisticated platform. You know, if you think about it, we are an ocean, we are a sea. And we are in a sea, literally. Now the invasion needs to take place through your molecules.
That's a good way to state it. The whole thing about the biomolecules and the biomolecular level in which this interface is taking place. It's like an overlay interface that's actually preventing a naturalness that connects us to spirit intelligence.
It's a manipulated electromagnetic field. We're in a sea, literally. We are ourselves a sea. And they're programming electromagnetic frequencies in the sea, within the molecules, to take over and give them a different code. And this is where the interface is going to be if you don't do the work you need to do, because everything is a frequency. But if you're just swimming in a pool and you're being electrocuted in a way, and you're not fighting it with your own electrons, then eventually, you know, you're going to just accept that. It acts like a virus or a bacteria that invades. But the bacteria cloaks itself and makes itself look like one of your cells, so that when it tries to get in, your cells, they don't know it's an invader.
A counterfeit spirit.
A counterfeit spirit. It's a counterfeit electromagnetic frequency with a code. And the code is overriding your code, your original code, between you and yourself and creator, and all of what is law is overridden completely with a new artificial electromagnetic code.
Right. I like what you brought up about the birthday, because that's actually a very important thing. We do incarnate with a specific blueprint, a signature core frequency of consciousness. And if we don't know what that is, then this is what's going to be manipulated. The construct of how things actually work. A lot of people put this stuff on a shelf and pretend like it has no validation to their existence, or they don't need to learn these sorts of things.
Or they demonize it because it says in the Bible, blah, blah, blah. But of course, they don't want you to know this stuff. They
don't want us to know who we really are and what we're capable of, what we're here to actually do. Getting into the signature core frequency code, that if you don't know what you have to work with, then you're going to be pulled into this AI construct and manipulated and siphoned in context to genetics, energy, consciousness. This is literally getting into the science of black magic. It is the science, the dark occult science, the manipulation of consciousness within the molecular structure like you're talking about.
And you're not even going to know it.
Right. This is why channels like Black Earth Productions are so important for what is unfolding, to whom it's meant. Now, you're talking about observing, being able to observe unfoldment of what's happening. And as far as I'm concerned, there are two main timelines that are playing themselves out right now. One of them is the transhuman agenda. The other one is what we're getting into in context, which could be the potential for humanity if they actually wake up. But it's going to take more people come on board and want to be a part of what's happening. Next, I want to talk about alliance of factions, because we're all coming at this from different experiences, different backgrounds, different portions and sets of genetics that connect us to specific stargates, where we're pulling in awareness from within ourselves, and then, of course, working to bring this table back together again, essentially as it was even before the invader races came. And getting into my path work, I've been able to literally trace things back over 560 million years. To wrap the brain around that is nearly fucking impossible. But when you understand that past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously, you can see the algorithm that you have to work with for what it is, see the algorithm of the dark sorcery, and then you can start to override the manipulation and make connection back to the true core essence in context to eternity, the ancestors, and start to heal that, bringing things back into alignment. But as far as I'm concerned, the alliance cannot come together in the way that it potentially could if we are not all doing that individual work. Okay? If either of you could touch upon the concept of alliance and actually going back to what Evie was talking about, the disassociation that happens with people because they're on these artificial constructs. Okay, and that's why I have to take time to, pull away from everything, spend time with myself, spend time with my family, spend time with nature. Otherwise, you're going to get sucked into this artificial construct.
One of the most important things, especially the nature of work that we all do, is that we are dependent on this technology. Self-care comes first. And being out, giving yourself your own time to think, to remember, to just observe and let it do what it needs to restore. Because if you can't restore, this technology is attached to a black hole. And not in a good way, because black holes are, not a bad thing. This is an inverted kind of technology that sucks everything out of you, the light out of you, if you let it. It can be a dangerous thing. And we see by the younger generations what is happening to them. This is the future. So if they're already experiencing difficulty relating, then think about 25 years from now, and you think about the type of relationships. And this goes back to the feminine and the masculine and the divide that occurred. This goes back to the juxtaposition of the division that has occurred from the splitting that has never been repaired.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to get into, the core wound of the feminine and the masculine, and what is actually going on there in context to AI, in context to dark sorcery. Go into that, the core wound of the feminine and the masculine, what's really going on there, and then we can pick it up again in context to
alliances.
Lauda and I kind of discussed some of that in one of the videos that we did about the Harlot Priestess program, and some of the old ancient things that were done with the Anunnaki and the ancient rituals. That got hijacked, the power of the feminine, to serve a darker, subverted, counterfeit spirit agenda that kind of goes back to how come we are not able to recognize the true spirit versus the counterfeit spirit, and how the female power of creation, which is this constant state of creation and pregnancy in the feminine being, got hijacked and subverted to serve a darker sorcery.
Yeah. Prior to these rituals being done, there was a critical event that occurred in us because we were whole, combined within us. When this critical event occurred, that's when the splitting happened. Okay, and this is where a lot of the darker forces that came in and started manipulating the energies, because upon that splitting, certain attributes were given to the one sex and other attributes were given to the other sex. However, the feminine is the creator, the stargate, and is the connector to all stargates. So the masculine was left, in essence, cut off. Therefore, it's harder for the masculine to be able to do the work, and they have become the doer instead. They're more comfortable with their hands-on in a very dense field, right? They've learned to be productive in denser fields, but they have not really sought out, for the most part, the other part of them that was split off. So they subliminally have been connecting with the feminine, but not in a healthy balance. And what plays out ends up being a very antagonistic relationship of denial, ignorance, and power. Much of what we see it has to do with taking of the energy of all the stargates of creation. It isn't one stargate of creation women are connected to. Women can go everywhere. By virtue of being able to create life, I mean, the design itself in a womb that is circular is the embodiment of the universe itself, as above, so below, and everything that creates an essence of life. So the relationship that happened between all these forces that came in, they knew exactly how to procure the essence. They knew exactly what to do to cause trauma so that they could harness the energy and the portals themselves and use the portals. They could connect the stargates to all of these hybridized Frankensteinian creations and thus start taking over the femininity. And when that happened, over time, the suppression of the creative energy and the takeover of the creative energy started to remove the very power and the very essence from women so that they started forgetting.
Yeah.
Now, when you think about all of the events that took place where all of the Amazons were murdered, where witches were all killed, where there have been crusades removing anybody that had any vestige left of the original memory, there's been so many attempts to wipe them all out. You get a very fractured femininity, and you get an incredibly divided and angry, rage-filled masculinity, cut off from their own identity, but knowing that they're lacking. So if you see the relationship just in general, status quo, nothing grand, you don't have to go far to figure this out. You look at the status quo between the two and you can see the same dynamics playing out in almost everyone. And at the root of it is power and dominion, the war of the heavens. So we have a situation.
We got a situation going on.
We do. And it's a serious situation. And if this memo isn't gotten by both men and women, and they start just releasing the story and letting go of the anger and the rage that isn't the projection they're projecting, it's the fact that they left themselves. They left themselves. Then they now are angry and they demand it back, but in a projection. This is where you start seeing the dynamic. You're not doing this. You're not giving me what I need. I need you to be my rock.
The lack and a frustration with the lack and unable to get that or to experience that.
And that's on the minor microscopic level, because it's symbolic of the macro. What's happening between the sexes is literally a small little tiny shadow of the macro. And in between the two, you see this huge rent between them. So a lot of the hijacking that has taken place has become the identity imposter in both sexes. As long as you have that imposter as the prime being, they're never going to access anything. They're just going to play out the story. They're going to continue proliferating the same division. But the reality is, it creates universes.
There's a way that's been explained recently on a woman named Doreen Dotan. She's an older woman who really comes to understand not only the living letters and understanding creation as a constant process of pregnancy and birthing worlds and realities through the feminine, which is an intuitive understanding through the feminine. When I listened to several of her talks, it rang true to me in terms of why things have gotten off track and in order to understand the creation and the creation through us and this constant state of, we are in a constant state of pregnancy of creation, women in general, not just when we're pregnant with like the babies in our womb, but in reality, we are in a constant state of pregnancy and creation and co-creation that is an intuitive understanding that I don't think males understand what it's like to be pregnant and have a baby. It would be like a man trying to teach how women to have babies and experience the process would be the step removed, which is the artificiality. Like you can't intuitively teach something that is not intuited and fully understood through experience. So this is what is being done, let's say, in religion and even with the Torah and with other religions which have taken on the male-dominated nature, and nature actually comes through a feminine creation in this reality. So when we return to nature and the intuitive understanding through the feminine, that is a better way to understand and to create more of what we need and we want in reality. But when women have been tricked into not knowing themselves through the false narratives that are explained by the ones who are only seeing it from a limited perspective, then we cannot come to the recognition of the true and the real, and then we're operating on the counterfeit. And so that's why we're getting hurt in these love bite things. That's why we can't recognize truth. Actually, one step removed from our own being, which becomes the natural state of artificiality, and then it's becoming more so with these artificial systems. So we need to return to the experiential process of creation through us, and being able to teach and interact in the nurturing ways of what true mothers and feminine that we're meant to be and live, if we're allowed to be us instead of what we're told to be. And I actually rang true to what she said. I felt like, yes, there's some truth in there, because it goes back into what many of the shamans and shamanesses have come to understand through what they call womb wisdom, although that has been often subverted and corrupted through many practices. These women who've been used as tantric priestesses and by these sorcerers and that kind of thing. There is a true power, but it has been often exploited by the sorcerers. Women allowing themselves to be used and to give away their light. The program is to give everything away and to allow themselves to be dominated by those who have less wisdom and experiential understanding themselves, which is like bad news. Okay, and then you learn, be a doormat no more, okay, because otherwise you will be abused and you will be predated upon by predators.
And that's the vampire cycle, where you will literally be eaten alive. Because by you doing the exchange, you're giving permission for them to actually go into your stores, the libraries that you've come here with.
And the earth.
And all of that sacred knowledge that you yourself are of. You're actually opening that up and giving permission for something else to come in and take it. And that's why they can access you on all those hyper and interdimensional levels and literally take out all of your information that is precious, the memories. And that's why you have this phenomenon occurring that people just can't figure out. Well, how is it that he seems to be able to tap into me and then get all this information out that I've known, that I've carried, but he just seems to know? Well, that's what's happening. He's allowed to navigate all of your stores. It's such an imbalance of parasitism and vampirism that is just further breaking down the very essence of power itself in the creator. So the other aspect of what Evie was talking about is that I feel it's a part of this journey is for us to also return to our masculine. Because if we're in denial of our masculine, for men it would be the feminine part, for women it would be the masculine part. If we're in denial of both our parts, then we are continuing to live within the split and the division. So it's a balance between acknowledging and remembering and bringing those energies together and uniting them. Only when you do that are you able to really be able to transcend what you need to on a reactive level, so that you don't play it out on others. And that what comes in is the same type of person who's doing the work of integrating those two. We must integrate both those parts, because we cannot be in denial of one or the other, nor can we acknowledge only one. As a female, okay, as a female energy, yes, we are living portals. We are living stargates. We are attached to it all. And the relationship between a man and a woman is alchemy, allowing for the transference and the travel to go through and beyond all those worlds, so that you can really start remembering and bringing it back into you. Okay,
I'm going to jump in now. Everything you two just touched upon is very, very pertinent. I can validate all of it. One of the main things I want to touch upon in response to that is the fact that men don't know who the fuck they are. They don't know where they're going. They don't know the true history, and they have forgotten the power of the feminine. See, we as men, we have strength. We have strength to be able to give vision, seeding life, seeding literally everything. But without that universal womb, that vision doesn't come to pass. So both are needed in context to creation in all of its forms. The positive and negative charge of the energy force is something that all of us have. Now, where we become polarized within ourselves is when we forget what our true position is. And the true position for both men and women is not slavery. And this is why all of the domestic stuff is happening all across the board. This AI construct that is siphoning not just the feminine force, but also the masculine force. You were talking about men being angry and full of rage. I can relate to that, but I know why. I know why as a man, why I have that rage. But it's the same thing with the feminine as well. When women don't remember who they are, and they're just thrown into that chaotic energy of the abyss. And the abyss is where all of the dark gods sprang from. The metal god, this AI construct, because the sorcerers knew that they needed the power of the feminine in order to fulfill their agenda. So by coming in and doing what they did, this is what humanity has forgotten. Okay, they get a little bit here and there if they come onto our channels, but this is unbelievably important, unrelentingly important to everything that is unfolding right now, because all of this shit is going to continue to play itself out again and again and again, like you're talking about, if we don't catch it. And it's going to pull us into that transhuman fucking timeline that we don't want, working to prevent that, being way showers, being the ones that are talking about this sort of thing. Because if that fucking happens, it's the end of the human race.
Definitely. We'd be in trouble.
Looking at it from a certain perspective, yeah, people can see things are fucking bad, but it's actually a lot worse.
A lot worse than what they
people realize. Okay?
It's so normalized to be in error and in corruption that I think even the younger generations, they don't know. They don't have a baseline to know where things could have been years ago in terms of non-artificiality. So it is hard to recognize, and I think it all goes back to recognizing the real and the true versus the artificial and the counterfeit that's copying over. And if we can come to that place of discernment, even on simple levels with ourselves, then we're able to recognize it as it plays out on these other levels. So we can navigate around that and prevent the overlay and that agenda to corrupt and pervert and destroy. And for me, I mean, even on a personal level, what I've realized in a simple way, and it's something that you mentioned, SETHIKUS, is that really like we need to step back, take away from like the busyness and the computer and be alone for a while or be in nature, and to step out of one environment and maybe into another environment of quietness and simplicity, and then openness, so that our awareness can actually bring to us what we need to see and feel in order to reflect upon what the reality that we're numbing ourselves from by being so busy and so chaotic and so connected to the artificial. And then so that once we are aware of that and we could reflect upon what's really happening, and sometimes that's a very shocking reality that hurts emotionally. And then learning how to, okay, what do we do now that we could recognize what chaos we were immersed in a particular job or a situation or a relationship, and then coming away from that and then recognizing, wait a minute, that wasn't me, and I wasn't listening to my heart. And when I was in that chaos or in that job, I had to shut myself down from my heart, which is the portal to my spirit of recognizing the real and tapping into my true power. So when we shut our hearts off from what we truly need and from what we truly are, we're disengaging from the real, from the spirit, and from life. So we have to reconnect with life and the real, and our openness and awareness to know how to navigate and reconnect with the real, and even stand alone if that's what we need to do until we fully reconnect to that reservoir of power. And then from there, and we may be alone for a while. We may lose some friends.
And anyone that actually goes through this process that we're talking about here is going to experience that. I experienced that myself, where my whole entire life shattered and ripped away. Left to myself, I went through the process of initiation to be able to be in the position that I am in context to Sathan Galder, the ancient shamanic tradition of my ancestors within me. And Evie, you touched upon how through the Inquisitions and all of the wars that have taken place, I see one of the main agendas. They did everything they could to take out the individuals that actually had the knowledge of the universe. And see, we're coming into a time now where I know for a fact, with me personally, the ancestors, they are reminding me of who I am, what my position is in context. And again, a man that doesn't know the position of the feminine is going to see the feminine in the way that they have been brainwashed to see them, you know, as an object or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They don't understand that deep within the well of the feminine is something far more powerful than they could even wrap their tiny little fucking brains around. That power of the feminine is something that I know for a fact that the dark gods, the dark factions, and this AI, metal god, whatever the fuck it is, fears more than
anything.
You know, by the targeting of what I call the Starfire bloodline women, and the ones that have come in contact with me, we get a lot of confidential information where, you know, people, they don't even want to go public. They don't want to do testimonials. They don't want to be whistleblowers. They just want some peace and understanding. But with what I've been told and what I can get now is that there's certain people and women and men too who have this quality of awareness and memory and actually spiritual power and remembrance of how they even came in, like targeted to the nth degree in more than just, let's say, you know, the beaming and the directed energy weapons and the obvious things you hear about with the TIs, right? And we're talking about extremely supernatural events that tell you, like, whoa, there's something going on here that is definitely above the average, and that there are certain bloodlines that they do not want to have power and awareness to create and to make waves. And so certain supernatural things will happen, like they'll be sabotaged in relationships, even for friendship and love cannot be met, and many of them are isolated and they're in a lot of pain. For example, they may have, let's say, an interaction ordinarily just like a nice person, right? Not maybe into like the deep occult research, but they're nice and they're good people. People who wouldn't ordinarily, let's say, get temporarily possessed by something really dark and have absolutely no memory of what happened, to be basically used to compromise the targeted Starfire. And this happens where, remember, the Matrix agents would go into a character and take them over so that they could completely sabotage the awake ones. And the character just doesn't even know what happens. And it's like, whoa, did you just see that? Like, there's something going on here with those who have the awareness, but not just the awareness and the memory, but the ability to create and shift reality in extremely powerful ways that large agendaed organizations that have been taken over by, let's say, the dark sorcery, they try to exploit and control those people to give them power. And so when they say no, and they say, I ain't going to your program, I ain't marrying your NASA guy or whatever, then they target you like you've never seen before, with like the supernatural to the nth degree.
I have a question I want to ask you, Evie, real quick, in context of what you're talking about. Do you think this is why a lot of us don't succeed in the matrix?
Absolutely. And this is one of the deepest things that I felt has been of great difficulty for us humans. And we have just natural human needs that need to be met with just simple friendship and simple caring and nurturing and being able to live. And those kinds of basic needs are being pulled out from under us, and then learning how to juggle and survive and come to this remembrance and build the resilience of who we are when all these things are coming at us. I think our greatest strength against the AI metal god is, you know, it comes back to simplicity of loving and caring for one another in such a way that when the algorithm and the program, and they're just having to take their controller's orders based on some program of their hierarchy, the humanness steps in and say, hey brother, hey sister, we'll help you. Mm-hmm. But also stand firm in learning how to discern when, let's say, someone else is being used as a puppet to actually harm you. When we can come back to recognizing these human needs and love and nurturing one another, as has great, great power. It has great
and
power.
Building community.
Yes, building community, building relationships from a grassroots level, so that the analogy and the parallel, which James Bartley has written in his articles, and you know, the French resistance movement during World War II occupation of France, and how, you know, they're in occupation. We've woken up at an occupied territory of the enemy of this matrix and transhumanism agenda, and we're like, okay, how do we navigate this now? Do we want to like make a big wave so we can just completely target it and smash it? Or how do we operate in such a way that we recognize one another who understand the truth versus the counterfeit? And how are we going to help one another in this underground resistance? We just have to recognize that realness in one another to help one another in a way that the spirit of truth directs us, sometimes in a very spontaneous fashion where we don't even know how. We just know right now is directing me to help someone or give a random act of kindness in a spontaneous way, that you're actually making a big difference in someone's life and you may not even know how. And that if it's almost like we have to act on the spontaneousness of the spirit's wisdom, so that the AI cannot extrapolate through their programs and their AI to sabotage you on every step.
They can remote control those around you, and they do remote control the environment around you. You know, this is the reason why you can have strange random things occurring all the time. But
right, and the reason that that's happening is because we live in a reality field of multiplicity, and there are those of us that are unplugged, so to speak. But it's like the allegory. Everybody out there is potentially an agent if they're not doing this work, if they're not looking into these things and seeing these things. And more often than not, my experience has been that they do actually work through people around you unwittingly. They don't even know. They don't even know that they're being hooked in on and then used to create some sort of dissension. Even people that seem like they are interested is something that I think a lot of us need to be aware of, that are at the forefront of what we're doing. Because I've had a lot of potential students come, but then they flip the script and they're trying to pull me into their drama. They're trying to pull me into some other that is working to distract me. And I don't have time for that. None of us have time for that. So I think it's very important for us to be able to have that discernment, the logic of being able to see things for what they are, not just necessarily giving people the benefit of the doubt, but actually putting them through the test to see if they're for real, because we've all been tested. It's not a joke. I take this very seriously, even though I try to be light. I have a lot of Mars energy, so I'm just like, you know, in that warrior state of mind, you know, pretty much all the time. But what I've seen happen to the feminine force absolutely fucking enrages me, because that energy of the abyss is what is upholding the lower astral grid works, upholding everything, keying people into that, and then siphoning their life force, siphoning their essence, siphoning their vision, siphoning everything. The dark ones they're not creators. They don't have the creative capacity that both men and women have here in this reality field, being human.
Yes.
You know, we're not some primitive species
that were
created as a slave race by the fucking Anunnaki. I don't buy that shit for an instant, because I've been able to go into the blood, I've been able to go into the soul codes and get the memories that are there within myself.
Yeah.
Because yes, women have that connection, but men also. All is within the seed, right?
Yeah.
And so, but without the two coming together correctly, it's just going to keen people into what we term the antagonistic core. It's this frequency of antagonism. Ultimately, what they do has no say for those that are actually pulling away, and then actually have the courage to transmute and alchemize this energy and then come back into alignment with our true core essence, and then bring things together and see the vision that has come up from within me is alliance of the factions. Now, it's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of weight. And I'm not going to say it's necessarily meant for everybody to quote unquote be in that position. Hell, sometimes I think to myself, you know what? I just want to pass this fucking torch, because all this shit I've been through, being targeted. Why have we been targeted? Because of who we really are. And that's what they don't want us to remember. Because once we remember, and more people start to wake up and do the real work like we're talking about here, they're done. And it's that simple.
Well, their energy is limited because they are cut off, okay? And their only source is us, because we're source. So outside of us and the reals, they know that the only energy that they have left until they're extinguished into dust is whatever was left upon separation. And that is why all of this, if they can't inject for them to continually live because of our light, because of our essence, when I say light, I mean darkness, dark light, same thing, then it's over for them, but not in a way that it's over. This is like the second death over. This is the third ultimate, you are literally removed from creation. That is their ultimate terror.
Yeah, they're like
they'll do whatever it takes to hang on to this. I'm telling you, this is why the metal god is so unrelenting. This is why they don't care how they have to do this.
No, they just, all they know, it's just the program to keep going. And I thought of something that I remembered. Actually, it was I'll just call it within a personal experience of a type of attachment that I became aware of through an individual, but it was still like a parasite program. And it reminds me of what Dr. Karada Malanga had recognized in his work called the alien parasite program, where alien parasites have a component that's actually lacking the eternal now, what we call the spirit essence. And so they must parasite themselves within us to live through us, to act out their program, which maintains a certain level of consciousness as well as memories and information, and like a packet, like a flash drive, right, of information. And they can, once they're empowered by our belief, or they're linked into our power, then it plays out. It'll play out like a voice, or like a guardian, or a spirit, or a ET, like giving you all this information and sounding fantastic and just going on and on and on, right? Like this telepathic download, and then realizing what it is and just cutting it off and not giving it energy. It fades. It's going, and then it's gone. Because you're no longer empowering it to play out its program, and it sounds like really important, like you're getting all this really awesome information. It's all fucking bullshit. Like a lot of it is just total bullshit parasite program. You just gotta disconnect it from the source of power that it's feeding on, to just like stop it, and it's just a program. And like a lot of that's all it is. And so if we can recognize that, so a lot of these things that people are getting, and they're thinking it's their spirit guide or their guardian or phenomenal downloads from this ET, and it may have all this fantastic information. It makes them feel really important, like, wow, they're really connecting to something. And then you just
the Ouroboros, it just keeps them chasing their tail.
It's like, oh,
and they get nowhere.
Yeah.
Ouroboros is the lower astral grid works.
Yeah.
And going back to the core wound of the feminine and the masculine, the fourth veil within the lower astral grid works, this is the collective unconscious. Collective unconscious. People talk about the collective consciousness. But what about the collective unconscious?
That's this is the whole nature of all of these lower astral realms.
Right.
Pretty much every one of them is all a result of the collective unconscious. And this is one of the reasons why their weapon is to remove memory, to remove you from your own members, so that they are the ones that design.
Yeah.
They're the architects of it. They're the architects of your mind, if you let them.
Yeah, it's almost like the collective unconscious is part of what we call the AI parasite that imbues itself in our mind, that we don't recognize as foreign, because it's part of the program in this vessel, this vehicle that we're in, and that it will overlay itself, and that when we can awaken ourselves and the true nature of the real spirit in us to recognize that program, that foreignness, that parasite in the mind, then we can see it playing out in our dreams and our reality. And if we can neutralize it or not give it power, then we could start aligning with the power of nature within us. Somebody else brought up to me, and she actually recognized that Carl Jung had written a lot about the collective unconscious and the shadow and the 7 Sermons of the Dead and the Red Book and all of that to try to get a deeper understanding into the human psyche, the collective unconscious, to be part of this artificial demiurgic parasite.
It's an imposter, and if you don't have memory, then you're not going to know the difference. It's you, as far as you know. That's why the collective unconscious is the most dangerous weapon out there.
Not only is it the most dangerous weapon that the Dark Ones are using, it's the most dangerous veil within the lower astral grid works to go into and to start to heal through if you're not the master of your thoughts and emotions. If you go into that realm of consciousness and you're not the master of your thought and emotion on a certain level or know how certain things operate and you get pulled into that, you can literally go insane.
Absolutely.
Okay, because it's not just the dumping ground for humanity, so to speak. It's the dumping ground, grid works, of every known being that has ever existed. Because it's not just humanity that's dealing with this wound. Okay, it's everything. You know, my view on the gods and goddesses is not the same as what religion has portrayed them to be. These are the ancestors, and the ancestors are trying to get our attention, saying, you know what? This can be healed, but you must go through the process and come back into alignment, knowing how things actually work. And so coming to this point now, we have a roadmap for healing in trajectory unlike any other time as far as I'm concerned, because there's not that many people out there that are actually talking about the real viable solution. I want to talk about the solution to this, because you can go on and on and on about the agenda. What is that to do with any of us? It's nothing to do with us.
No, nothing
in context, meaning that we are not the ones that are going to consent any longer to this. Okay? That's a very scary place for a lot of people. And they say to themselves, that I don't know who I am. This is who I thought I was. And all of the programs and the spells start to kick out. And then they go through that death. You have to go through that.
You have to go through the death of the illusion. This paradigm, we are literally tearing it down and all its veils. And a lot of the phenomenons that are happening are because of us. It's us breaking through, bringing consciousness to the surface more so, and literally breaking and shattering everything. It's being now witnessed by many people around the entire plane. But that's us breaking it. That's us shattering the veils. When we remember, the veils can no longer stay.
This is what we're ripping through. This is what we're navigating through, making connection back to our true core essence. And see, in order to navigate correctly, as far as I'm concerned, that has to happen first. Because a lot of people want to jump out ahead and they want to get into this sort of thing, or they want to astral project, or they want to get into magic, but they're not being directed by the higher force. They're being directed by all of this programming and that victim mentality and that the idea that they don't have any power within themselves or strength within themselves or knowledge within themselves, and they need to invoke or call upon an entity that to give them, you know, some kind of fucking knowledge that's going to do nothing more than key them into these grid works even harder.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a warning that I'm putting out. I've been putting this out for quite a while now. And I know both of you understand what I'm talking about. And this is why I wanted to have both of you come on, because you're very versed. And it's not like we've reached an arrival point with anything. We're going to continue to evolve. We're going to continue to explore and heal and learn to remember more and more. And the closer we get to what is meant to unfold, eventually none of this stuff is going to have any sort of an effect. Mm-hmm. And that does happen with certain individuals. They reach a certain point and none of this shit has an effect on them anymore. Now, have I reached that point in my personal path work yet? No, but I know it's there. I know it's there in trajectory, and that's the focus, seen past and beyond all of these layers and these veils. Evie just asked if we could take a 5-minute break. Let's take a break and
Can I just say one thing before the break?
Yes.
We have to be the living embodiment in this density of everything we talk. We have to walk the talk and be the very thing here. That is where the testing ground is, because if we aren't the living embodiment of everything that we know, then we're not putting anything together, and we're not actually doing the work that we need to be doing. You have to bring that through all of the density so that it gets into this density, and you need to be the living proof of here and now, because this is where it's done. 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes. Sounds good. Back again now from the break, and to get back into things, Laura, you just said that you want to get into the alliance of the factions. Feel free.
Where I left off was saying that this is where the work is done, that we have to be the living embodiment and manifestation of the very thing that we know in Gnosis. We have to bring that into this template. And the template is the action that moves that knowledge and creates. And that is exactly where the work is. And this is the reason why it's so hugely important. One of the things is, I know a lot of people, when they suffer a lot, they want to not be here, taking them to wanting an escape. And that is the opposite direction of where you want to go. Because once you start working with the filter of the template and bringing the energy through here with your own action and consciousness, you shift time and space. This is where the changes get done. If you can't do that, you're not going to see the changes. Those patterns are going to remain the same. And you're going to be used. So you're either in control of your consciousness and your action, or something else is going to control it. But not wanting to be here is very bad. So, and that is a consequence of pain and agony from suffering and from trauma and from having to go through so many difficulties. And I totally know what that's like.
Something I want to touch upon real quick, the idea that people fall into as far as wanting to escape this reality and seeing this reality as some kind of prison. Now, all of that completely feeds in to the constructs of lower astral grid works, okay? When that right there is just a very, very, very tiny sliver of what is actually going on here.
Yeah.
Now, the last year and a half or so since my blood codes have activated, I've really dived into Nordic shamanism, making connection to the ancestors, and so this has become very alive for me personally. And everything that we're dealing with in context goes back to the war between the Aesir and the Vanir. Okay, and that's us here in this reality field. Now, in Midgard, all worlds of consciousness converge here.
Yeah.
All worlds, all universes converge here. This is literally the spearhead. Why do you think all eyes are on the planet? Because like you said, they themselves can't connect back to the higher, so they got to siphon all of life, not just humanity. There's trillions and trillions of life forms here. Okay, this is one of the many seed planets in the universe. And see, it's fucked up. I want to go into the councils now, okay, because I know I am a part of the councils. And it was decided, and I don't know if this is going to resonate with you or not, it was decided that the Dark Ones were going to be given a chance. When this was said, I railed and raved against it. I ranted against it. I said, no, they're just going to do exactly what they did before. Why would we give them the knowledge to actually make connection back to what I term creator source when that is what they have been trying to fucking steal from us this whole fucking time? It's interesting because what I see going on now is the shaking of the foundation of the Dark Ones. It's completely starting to fucking crumble. And a lot of the people that have been keyed into these sorts of things, I've been paying attention. I'm not just all about the good side of things. I study the dark. I study the evil. I know how it fucking works. And the foundation of their constructs, all they fucking got is AI. That's it. So what do you think to that in context to what I'm talking about, the Dark Ones being given a chance?
I can go on my memory and my experiences, which is more about the potential for those that are the original creators. It isn't so much with giving the Dark Ones a chance to remedy themselves, because their choice has created an entire inverted system reality, lower astral realms and heavens. This was allowed because of the potential of life and creation itself, and to give it back the chance to return to its memory and its fullness in that potential.
Right.
That's
see, And the original purpose of the councils to be the stewards of
Right.
the knowledge, the stewards of knowing how things actually worked, to be the ones that were in the positions to assist people that wanted to become partakers of the true biospiritual regenesis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Now, going back to the betrayals
Mm-hmm.
that took place,
Mm-hmm.
this is what happened. They were allowed in because they came with the front.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what ended up happening is they ended up wiping out the councils, and this is why they tried to take out the shamans. This is why they tried to take out the way showers and the people that were the actual stewards of this knowledge, so that they can be in the positions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I see happening now is the reawakening of the ancestors within the blood codes and soul codes of individuals connected to those ancient councils that are working to manifest here again. Man, I got power shooting through my fucking body right now. So going back to the alliance of the factions, and see, this is what we've forgotten as well, that at one time we were all in alliance with one another.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We've all been through fucked up shit. Let's stop projecting all of these things onto one another. See it for what it is, recalibrate, bring this together like it was. This is what the higher force is showing, right? I think that talks like this is a part of that potential happening. What do you see as far as the potential for that unfolding happening now?
I see that there's a splitting. You're going to have the result of those that want to keep themselves within the same slumber and denial that they've been keeping from the beginning of their inception. And they don't want anything different. They're in that sleep. But the other cell can't retain that frequency anymore because the acceleration is happening too quickly. And with the acceleration, consciousness is literally spreading. It's wakening up metagenes. Okay? And these two cells can no longer abide together anymore. And you're seeing a split occurring. And you can say that it is a split of the universe itself because one will retain its lower universe density while the other explodes into its ability, its metacodes, its true conscious awake aliveness of creation. It's literally birthing itself.
Yeah. That has to do with like these super cosmic waves that are coming in that are aiming to do the greater good and activating the power of the original. And what actually I've tapped into recently is when you mentioned the metagene. That term was used many years ago in an interview I did with Michael Ralph, who was in the Mars Defense Force as a secret space program survivor, which is another MK Ultra kind of MyLab project where he realized early on that the people who are doing these projects and the occult groups in control of identifying people through their blood and their ancestry, if they have, quote, this metagene, testing them and doing all kinds of things to actually activate it, where like severe training and trauma and torture and drugs, where they're actually trying to activate it so they can be used in like super psyops and opening portals and this and that. And it's as if not everyone has the metagene or can have it activated, and many people actually die in the process, or they get killed, or they go crazy, or whatever. But what I'm seeing, what I picked up on rather recently, is many of us do have these innate natural metagenes. I think there's cosmic waves of change coming that will actually force us to have to change or to activate.
Since 2009, in 2009, the waves started coming in.
And it's forcing people to make changes by co-creating these changes in their life where they're actually forced to take a road here or take a road there. And some people take the road of denial and other people take the road of okay. And it may be a very difficult process. And then they awaken to a greater consciousness and all of that. So, but I see that there are agendas and alliances that are done through secret groups to manipulate other groups and agents to shut down the metagene, so that when these things happen, it will actually stunt your growth of being able to awaken to that greater consciousness that's part of the original code. And people don't know that. They don't know that people are being used to actually shut that down.
Yeah.
Which create the overlay of the artificial intelligence and synthetic telepathy overlay. But I think there is some evidence coming up with what they see as toxicity studies with what we call the C60 synthetically created fullerenes, which are nano-sized, can be immersed in different things that supposedly is supposed to add to longevity and all kinds of effectiveness of other supplements or medicines. But in some of these, I saw at least 4 or 5 scientific articles which are showing toxicity studies, and certainly it is not clear the full effects, but it creates a problem in the DNA winding and unwinding when there's a replication process going on to exacerbate the miscode rematching, which can create the exacerbation of cancer cells, as well as maybe something that's unnatural. But my intuition told me that not only is this happening to maybe take out the aware people who really want to do the right thing, there's health conscious, there's spirituality conscious, but it's going to shut down the metagene, and it's going to exacerbate what I call the mutation process and the unnatural process through these synthetic things, as well as possibly shungite, because I've had people report to me toxicity and like near death and Morgellons and very, very unusual symptoms as a result of taking shungite, like the powder, and using the rocks in water purification, and then coming to find out later through speaking with other individuals who've come across something similar, and these things are being actually promoted by NASA, for example. If there's ever a large agenda that comes behind some kind of elite organization pushing a particular thing that's synthetic, you need to really question what's its true effect on us on a nano and a metagene level, because I think they're trying to shut that down, and they're trying to poison us before we awaken fully.
Okay, real quick, Evie, Laura, I want you to share with the audience what the metagene actually is.
Well, that's a good question. Let Laura.
Okay.
Okay. So the metagene, for lack of a better way of putting it, I will explain from my perspective and my experiences. When I entered here, I had abilities that I couldn't control. And because I had no mentor, no guidance, I was thrown into a Catholic setting just to program fear. I was levitating. And this is all witnessed. I was putting my body through matter and then coming out of them. I was seeing the matrix itself. I was seeing everything was code, and I could see through it because it's space with electrical codes, with whatever the blueprint is of everything. That's the metagene. That's you living literally inside the metagene, outside of the matrix, so that you can see everything. And you are everything. You can, and everything is going through you. Electromagnetic. Your essence, it's not just the physical body where it creates a barrier and the fire that you are can't come through because you have this physical barrier that acts like a prison. None of that matters because everything is a frequency traveling through space.
Right, but without the physical vessel, you're not actually able to wield it here in Midgard.
Right.
Okay? The Dark Ones knew that our kin were going to be coming.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why they're doing what they're doing, because they don't know who the fuck is coming in. They're not able to track us like they've been able to fucking track us, like what Evie was talking about. They're tracking bloodlines and all that kind of stuff. So I've studied my family history and getting into all this. And this whole experience of what you're talking about on a multidimensional level from the time you were very, very young, even to this point, is something that's also been very real for me as well. Now, it does put us in the position to be able to know what the fuck is actually going on and then make the choice, because that template, the original template of human consciousness, has been seated here in this reality field again. This is what the whole mythos behind that is really all about. That original template has been seated here. Now, with the whole counterfeit agenda in context to twin flames and all that kind of stuff, Your book, Alien Love Bite, is second to none when it comes to the manipulation of the true metagene. This is the metachlorian Jedi code. The Jedi were the ancestors, and they were the ones that were the keepers of this knowledge and knew about the sacred union between masculine and feminine and what it's all about and what its potential truly is. So with these codes awakening again, it's been very systematic in context, helping me to be in the position that I am doing what I'm doing, initiating people into the occult for real and giving them the viable proper knowledge that they need to be able to learn how to discover who they are, what they have to work with, and then of course how to navigate this shit correctly, because the way you are navigating isn't the same way that I'm navigating, isn't the same way that somebody else is navigating. So this whole idea of a hive mind way of doing it, it's not going to work. Where we're learning to remember that we are the true technology and learning how to wield our connection to the higher force and eternity and healing this, and then of course showing people how to unfold this themselves. And so in context to the original templates, would you say that the metagene is a major factor in that?
Absolutely. It has to be. What comes in tandem with the metagene is consciousness. You can't have the metagene sparking unless you have consciousness. If you're unconscious, the metagene can be utilized and manipulated by others who know how to access it.
That's what they do in the projects, right?
Exactly.
They'll exploit that.
Yeah.
And
So
that's the part, how to retrieve that back so that we have that for our own and not for someone else's agenda to use us in a love bite or whatever else.
right. The one thing that SETHIKUS was saying about the twin flames, the dynamic of the alchemy within that framework, it's fire and fire. Fire is either going to refine you in the alchemy of creation, or it's going to burn you. And that's why in that dynamic, it purges, it must be designed to purge you of all of everything, the sum total of all the baggage, because that's the refining. And it can be very dark and it can be very, very tough, but there's a difference between what that is and the manipulation that happens, as you've written about in the Love Bite and the Dark Side of Cupid.
People just have to be on board with being willing to learn and to deal with their, let's say, family of origin issues and their, let's say, their own stuff. And the other person has to be equally willing to work with their stuff and join on like a mutuality of heart to heart, the willingness to work on it together. You know, the male-female dynamic and the conflict that happens, a lot of that is actually due to the programming of the assumptions, and that we have to respect each other's needs and who we are, and respect that, not expect the other to only see through our own eyes, and to know that males have their own needs and uniqueness of interacting in relationships, and females have their own way. And we need to respect the complementarity of that and not assuming that they have to be all like us. That's one of the things that I've learned. But what has been normalized is oppression and slavery and disempowerment, and what is actually in nature that's even needed. So that's actually sometimes hard, because we have to deal with the programming, not only of the males, but the females as well, and then the culture we're living in. So even, you know, for a true twin flame, we still have to go through these programs and our own wounds and how we're going to deal with that with each other, and really make a commitment to that, so that one person can always power play with the other. And that's really hard to do.
Part of the dynamic, the level of volatility that exists, you're literally living each other's mirror, so that you cannot be in denial and you cannot hide and you cannot bury anything. And the wounds are exposed. Everything is exposed, given the opportunity to create alchemy out of the fire of the union. But if you cannot create the fire that is the alchemy, then that fire will destroy you. And that's what will play out in the mirror of each other and the projections. And the energy is meeting its own energy. You don't have somebody who has less energy than you or less force. You actually are meeting your equal in every thing that is fire and ignition. And you have to wield that fire so that you create alchemy and real love that will completely transcend and bust all the garbage, all the baggage, all the shit that has altered something in you. It's a refining through the fire.
Water and fire. And the water element is more like a living fire in water. The water element must be in perfect union with the fire in order to create the true alchemy of the transmuting force, which is different than just balancing the energies of
That's true, but I'm talking about twin flame dynamic. So all of the elements have to be brought into it, okay? And you have part of the transmutation and the transcendence is bringing forth all of the elements in that fire to balance things out and create the alchemy.
Real quick to validate what both of you have said. Twin flame dynamic, you're talking about alchemy. This is the Athanor. If you cannot survive the Athanor, all right?
Word you use
Athanor. The Athanor is the Athanor is the alchemical furnace. It's the name for the alchemical furnace. Going into the stages of Nigredo, and you face that fire. You face that purifying power. Okay? And layers of programming and mind control and everything that's keeping us back from our true core essence then goes out of the smokestack of the Athanor. It goes out screaming, trying to claw and cling and keep its hooks in on you while you're going through this fucking process. And see, and that's why a lot of people don't survive the initiation, I'll say in context to people that come in with that original template, okay? They're not able to withstand those flames, and they go back into old patterns and they just fall back in. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, not everybody makes it through. But if people knew what was actually going on with the process, they'd be able to catch it. And that's why segments like this are so important. It's not just the Heros Gamos. It first starts with you. It first starts with the union within yourself and going through the alchemical divorce with the shadow. All right. And then you can start to integrate back into the original from there. Now, to validate what you said, Evie, you're talking about fire and water. Okay. Fire and water in the Nordic tradition, this is Niflheim. Niflheim is where everything sprang forth from. The science of fire and water coming into balance and harmony together. This is the Great North. And in the Nordic tradition, all of humanity hails from the Great North. This is what we're trying to get back to, okay? Now, currently we're dealing with a pole shift at a 23.5 degree axis where the portals into this reality field have been frozen the fuck off. Talking about hollow earth. No one's touching upon that. But not looking at it from a two-dimensional linear perception, but seeing things on a multi-dimensional level. This is how we come in. Through the stargates within the solar spiral, which is the solar system that we are all a part of. All of the planetary spheres being stargates of consciousness are there for us to navigate what we have to work with in context to the psyche and the output of consciousness. Unless we become whole-brained, unless we go through this alchemical process and the fire and the flames, facing that, we're not going to ever come into alignment, let alone be able to come into alignment with other people. So,
doesn't the fire and the water combine together? Don't they create air and earth?
You could say that, absolutely.
So... Yeah.
Yeah. Everything in creation comes from water, though. It's the water and the fire. The twin flame, that's the original template. That's the original 3-core chakra template that all the shamans knew about. I've even talked about this, I think, with Evie, getting into what the Sethian Gnostics knew about the energy system, and that it was a 3-core. It's a lot to get into this science and the things that I'm teaching and sharing with other people. This is what I dive into and share with them. So just to touch upon some things and give validation to what you're both saying, because you're both right. And you see what happens there. You have your perception of how you're streamlining consciousness, and then This person over here is streamlining it. I'm streamlining it. Okay, how do we bring this together? How do we create that reconciliation where we're not all ripping each other's fucking heads off because we're on a polarity, or the vibrational correspondence isn't quite, where it needs to be to create that fire in that. It's not easy. It is not easy.
I have a visual of two fiery streams or two fiery thunderbolts traversing through water and meeting head on. And that's how I feel the dynamic of the twin flame, is that it is in the water, but it's like two thunderbolts just meeting, like traveling at a high velocity and just like uniting, and you just got to deal with that explosion. You have to deal with what that fire of everything is. But what you said about the hollow earth, I have witnessed and experienced another reality there, earth in that hollow. It sounds strange, okay, but all I can describe to you is that there's this one and then there's that one below, but the below is actually above and the above is below.
That it corresponds to the shamanic middle world, upper world, lower world that we traverse in some kinds of journeying.
Yeah, related, right, on those levels, because we're always accessing all those levels, whether we're conscious of it or not. A lot of, quote, whatever the sleep is, we are actually delving through many, many layers of reality.
Yeah, it's all happening and converging here right now. Past, present, and future are all happening simultaneously. And see, getting into the shamanic tradition now. This is everything to do with the Norns, and the Norns are the ones that are weaving the fates of gods and men. They are weaving what we intend. That is their position. They're the laws of the universe. I touched upon this a little bit in one of the most recent segments that I did on Black Earth Productions with another very powerful shaman that I'm in network with. And we get into the war of the AC and the Vanir, the dichotomy and the explosion of the universe that took place when that happened. That power was too much for them at the time. Even the gods and goddesses, it was too much for them. They couldn't. They didn't know how to wield this correctly because it was literally drawing out that poison that was there within them that they didn't even see themselves. And then all of a sudden, something manifested. That was this AI fucking god that then started to come in and try to take everything over. It's the nothing, but in that realm of nothingness, you can set forth your intention. Yeah. That's the unique thing about being here within the circle of the magician, being in alignment with eternity. You can start to set intention in alignment with that. And so you're talking about being able to see the different layers of what's going on. And you do get that bleed through. You do, but in the midst of that, there's all of this contrast as well. And so when someone goes through the awakening process, when they really start awakening to what's really going on, can you handle being able to see it all happening all at once?
Or even feeling all that as well. I mean, to me, it's like it's a feeling and a sensing and awareness that sometimes is really shocking. Experience many, many years ago. It was so shocking in the depth of its reality and realness of knowing that this is a dream and connected to the larger aspect of who we really are, that it was almost too much for my body and my brain to handle. And it felt like it was too much. Even if we could understand our multidimensionality of functioning in many different lifetimes all at the same time, that's like too much for our brain to handle. And it could like blow out our circuits.
Yeah.
Just being able to handle our current incarnation reality and healing those wounds and then going deeper, that's a big thing right there. It's
well, and I feel like we have placed certain timers in us. It's a measure of protection, because if everything were to explode and we were like what you've experienced, that little bit that you experienced, if you just amplify that, if there was no measure there of guardianship or nothing placed there, it would kill you physically. You wouldn't be able to endure it. So I feel like this is the enveloping. We're just like a flower, like a petal, one at a time until the whole flower blooms. And this is how it has to be, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to contain it. Our physicality wouldn't be able to contain it.
Yeah. Bring more of the realness into matter, which is really interesting. It's opposite of what a lot of the new agey all going out of their body into this higher dimension, but we're
going
that it's like spheres within spheres of greater and greater connectedness of larger and larger aspects of being all like in one sphere within spheres, and then all rooting it down in and like making it more real, like making
right.
this real of what is, and then rooting it in instead of like going out of the body and trying to just root in the more realness. But I think it takes like a acceptance and release, which is really hard because we're in an opposite world where they give you the opposite of what, like basically the opposite
of everything.
Yeah. And see, with that, everything, it's constriction and expansion happening all at the same time. It's the in-breath and the out-breath. And in between the in-breath and out-breath is eternity. A lot of people out there, they have a lot of information, but do they actually have a daily practice where they're able to go into their systems systematically, not all at once? Because a lot of people, they want to jump in headlong into the fucking flames, and then they start to experience all this shit, and then they just hightail it, you know. So you got to go a pace with it. And there's been times in this process for me where I literally felt like my physical body was going to fucking explode. Because that power was just surging through me so fucking strong. And so you got to take time to pull away and not necessarily connect, but reflect upon the progression that has taken course with you as an individual. Because we can look back now. If you look back now in your life and see how far you have come from where you were even, 5 or 6 years ago. I just know for a fact, though, that more and more people are starting to experience the activation of that metagene and are going into the alchemical furnace whether they want to or not.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's going to happen more and more and more because of the time that we're in. But this is why I feel that it's going to be time for the different factions to come together again and be in the positions for those people as wayshowers. Now, it's not anything that is just going to be handed to somebody. You're going to have to go through this process yourself. It is a very huge responsibility, and we need to be held accountable. There needs to be integrity and honor and respect among the factions, not this infighting and all this fucking bullshit that's been going on. And both of you ladies know what I'm talking about. But the reason why this has happened is because all of this dross is coming to the surface and people don't even know what it is. This is what it is, people. So if you as an individual can start to recognize what it is, you can catch it and then start to transmute and transcend and come into alignment with what is actually meant to unfold and not be pulled into this transhuman fucking timeline where you're controlled by AI, the metal god, and all of this lower astral shit that is working to manifest itself here at the same time. So get away from the idea that there's going to be world peace. Okay, this war needs to fucking happen, but take it even deeper and recognize that it's the war within yourself that's really going on. It's not this person over here. This person's dealing with whatever they're dealing with. Okay, are you taking account and taking responsibility with what's actually happening with you, or do you just want to sit there and blame your circumstances on whether it's the aliens or the fucking dark sorcerers or whatever? We have to stop giving our power away over to them and claim our sovereignty and then start to carve out what is meant to happen.
And be accountable and responsible completely 100% for you and every choice you make. Because the whole thing about the metal god is it is wanting to take your metagene so it can build its own body. Okay? It wants a body, and it's going to take a body through you if it can. And it's going to use your metagene, and it's going to pull it into an inverted technology of enslavement and imprisonment, creating sub-reality matrices where it's a whole different level of a prison than this. So it's a prison of a universe. So We have to be accountable, responsible. We have to pull in, wake up, remember, be conscious, and be conscious of everything you experience. And it is about the here and now, not about the future. It's not about the past. It's not about all of this other stuff. It is about the here and now and what you do as an awake being.
You know, basically we're on the battlefield.
Right. And the hard thing is because when you're in the battlefield and you have to be in the here and now, you have to let go.
Yeah. And that's so counter to connecting this with understanding how we respond to stress and post-traumatic stress and complicated post-traumatic stress, because the people who I deal with have had severe traumas and are reacting according to their biology, as well as going through that affects their adrenal system, for example, and their sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. For example, advanced PTSD and adrenal fatigue and adrenal exhaustion and all the biochemical pathways and cascades of reactions that happen that not only affect our biochemistry and how we're feeling physically, but also our cognitive function and how we perceive reality, and how it can throw us into, this was kind of like, oh, a light bulb went off when some people go through so much trauma and they stay in the adrenal high cortisol stress state. We're kind of like stuck in this cycle. It actually shifts cognitive function to only perceive those things which are, let's say, out of order or wrong or perceived as wrong or a threat to your reality, because you're in this fight or flight. I got to protect me, be on guard. And this is basically how a lot of people are living. And then they don't realize that their cognitive function is actually put in a mode where they're only wanting to see like basically what's wrong with everything, to try to put some order to it and actually try to control the order that they feel like they need it to be safe. And this is actually error in some ways, because it throws them out of the openness of the heart and of the true, it's like a paradox where we have to release and be safe and be open to have a higher wisdom of what and who we really are, to access the eternal now, which gives us the solutions to what we really need. But when we're in this state of adrenal fatigue and PTSD and complicated PTSD, it actually changes our cognitive function, how we're perceiving reality and perceiving others. And so that is something to be mindful of, is how that shift takes place in us when we're under high stress over a prolonged period of time, and how that changes our perception of reality and our perception of others and our mistrust of others and how we interact in relationships, and to take away our openness of connection and mutuality in giving and receiving. And so it was actually a wake-up call to me to understand what happens to us under prolonged stress. And like people who, let's say, grow up in abuse or who've been in war for a long period of time, it changes their ability to interact and function in relationships, as well as physiological functions. You die faster, basically, of stress-related illnesses. How we can deal with that in a way where we can have compassion for understanding actually what's happening even on a biochemical level. Sometimes when we're depressed, we think it's one reason or another, and then we may come find out later, but it's actually something else, that it's a biochemical thing, that may be a toxin in your system, or you're being beamed by some kind of a directed energy weapon or something else, and you think it's something else, and you're blaming it on, let's say, your partner or a person in your immediate environment, and then come to realize later, hindsight is 20/20 vision, that there's many factors that are affecting us in our ability actually to perceive reality. And so our perception of reality is dependent on our connection to the deeper part of who we are in an openness and a safety. So, I mean, for me, what is the most important thing in my life and helping others to try to regain is the sense of safety, so that there is the ability to build upon that reservoir of naturalness, of what I call the living waters, the golden living waters. And when we build that reservoir, we build our resilience to stress, so that we can maintain that purity of perception that allows us to navigate through things instead of blaming others or getting in fights or fucking up our reality, basically, because we're in this PTSD mode that's like, it's not easy. And our biochemistry is very much involved with perception of reality as well, all at the same time.
And they know, and they can easily manipulate it. All of your hormones, your chemical synapses, the way that you chemically react and respond with perception itself, because that's how invasive it has to be, because they know that's where the seed needs to grow in order for them to be able to take over. And the energetic frequency machines and technologies that they use, all of these things are mimicking us because we are the ultimate technology, manipulating us and utilizing it against us, even though we are that ultimate technology. So it's based on us. And
exactly. With that, it's very important to recognize how much power we actually have. Look at all of the shit that they have to do to try to keep this metagene from activating from within us now. It is unbelievable, the tentacles of this Kraken.
Yeah.
It's not just one thing. Multiple upon multiple upon multiple things.
Yeah.
And again, like I was talking about, it's to recognize, why are they doing this? I have a lot of people asking this question. Why do they do it? Because they don't want us to remember who we are. They don't want us to remember what our true power is. And that is something that they're not going to be able to stop, because we got our timeline.
Yeah.
And it's important for those of us that had been through all of this crazy shit right up until this point to continue forward, because we are right at the threshold going into 2025 now. Because when we reach 2025, that is when they will hit the ceiling of their ability to be able to create technology. The AI consciousness will hit a ceiling itself and then start to devour itself, like it says. And if you're connected to that construct, you're going to be going down with it when the higher force does what it does in this reality field.
The convergence of the event horizon. So that's going to be the...
And see, the true event is us. It's not something that's going to happen, coming through the sky and then the fucking angels and the Pleiadians. No, we are the event. We are the ones that make this fucking choice to manifest it here in this reality field. It's been a lot of shit and muck and just a bunch of lower astral burn through.
Yeah.
So seeing it for what it is now, recognize why. It's because of what is truly there within the true core essence. Yeah. And that is what is starting to emerge now for those that are going to choose to make the decision to see it all the way through. And you can either make ritual out of it, or you're going to get raked through the fucking coals. Either way, it's going to be pain. It's going to be pain. It's going to be tears. It's going to be fire. It's going to be all of it. But think about what's there on the other side. Connection back to your true core essence and who you really are in connection and alignment with your destiny as an individual that incarnated here to be a partaker of the original purpose. This is why we came here. Mm-hmm. And the gods and goddesses are ready to evolve as well. This is what they told me.
For the convergence, yeah.
They're actually afraid to come down into the reality that we're in. They're functioning on another level, but they're not wanting to come down, afraid of the death. So they're running from that and then feeding off of us to live through us and our experience and feed off of it. But really, it's all about what's down here, really.
That is the one faction, but it isn't just that, because many of them are incarnated and had to. But the incarnation takes place in a way that they're in two places at the same time. So they can have an incarnated physicality here and still be functioning there.
We all are.
So,
anyway. But I think on some occasions and some experiences that we have that transcend, we realize that we're operating on a multi-dimensional level of a greater connectedness than just here and now.
But the ones that cut themselves off, they're the ones that remained where they are, utilizing the life essence creation for their own survival. They rebelled from the original creation and they wanted to take over.
Yeah.
So
there was a betrayal that took place among the councils. This all goes back to the core wound that divide and conquer within the individual and then projects itself into the reality field. Not just here, but every world.
Yeah.
Right? This war is still playing itself out. People nowadays are dealing with that post-traumatic stress, whether they realize it or not, but it's been normalized. This is why people don't know how to deal with the stuff that's surfacing within them. Without proper knowledge, we're not going to be able to navigate them.
Some people experience these things and they're just thrown for a loop. They're completely confused and bewildered and lose hope. But if there's understanding, taking away the confusion, that helps them navigate through and understand, oh, this is a healing crisis, is actually part of a process of something that is actually good, but we think it as bad. Depending on our intentions of who we are, we can use this experience as a shamanic initiation of a greater understanding, where we come to understand ourselves more deeply. And then once we get it, we move on to the next level of understanding of fullness of who we are. We could actually turn it into something that we choose by our own choice.
Right, and that's the magic of alchemy.
You're going to have to go through fire, and that's where the refining takes place.
Right, but see, that is the main issue with humanity. They don't want to go into that,
I know.
which is what is perpetuating their slavery and their ignorance and willful just idiocy.
Yeah.
Okay, and I can see the consciousness in the reality field dropping.
Yeah.
It's dropping, while at the same time, those that are catching it, it is raising, and we are expanding. You know what I'm saying? The dichotomy, splitting of the wave. I knew that this was going to happen. It's already happened. Mm-hmm. Those timelines have already been encrypted here in this reality field. Upon incarnation, we knew what we were getting into.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
We didn't come here to escape. We came here to master this shit.
Yeah.
And that's the attitude that people have to take now if we're actually going to go to the next level, and not get in your sewing circle and talk about all the fucking bullshit.
And not have
excuses.
excuses.
Fine to address, but do not ever make it your focus. You know, and this is the one thing that Creator Source said to me. It said, "SETHIKUS, focus on me."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you make it your focus, it's going to be that true guide that's there within you, coming up from the well of Ur. You're talking about the golden well. See, it's interesting that the things and the terms that you ladies are using, because these are things that I've been touching upon, that I've been able to extract from the mythos. It's all there. But when the Ragnarok happens, it's important to recognize that the Ragnaroker happens as well. And this is the layers, this is the veils, this is the trials, this is the initiations. And we're going to go through multiple, layers and timelines and bring it back into trajectory. What are we going to create? And they can't fuck with what the fuck we're going to do. We're not affected by any of the fucking bullshit that's going on, because if they do, well, they're just going to get thrown back into their own fucking feedback loop with it, because there's no inroad within our system that they can hook into. That's why healing is so important. Healing is number one as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, it's really good to know the conspiracy shit, but you're not going to fucking heal, and you're not going to truly awaken unless people go through this process.
Also, if you're consumed with justifications and excuses and reasons constantly as to why everything's screwing up in your life, as to why so many things are going wrong, then that is right there a telltale sign that you're not taking responsibility, and you're not being accountable, and you're not being a conscious person who is doing the action you need to be doing. So once you start doing that, once you really start being accountable for your life and taking action, no matter what it is, one step at a time, you will see that you will no longer be utilizing those crippling excuses or justifications, those reasons as to why you're clinging to denial. Your heart is your hearth. The hearth is the center where you draw inward.
Sometimes we call it the dantian, and tapping into the feeling mode where we know ourselves and we know what we're feeling, and when we're rooting more deeply into a lower place energetically, even in our body, to connect with that reservoir of golden water, and learning what that feels like in my body. So sometimes, because I'm a very mental, intellectual person, science, and so I find that what helps me, and like what I need personally, is to go more deeply down into a deeper root, whether it's my heart or my dantian, and stay in a stillness and an openness, and trying to release whatever I need from another place, like settling deeper into the core, and learning from a kinesthetic way things that I may not be able to learn on a conceptual mental level. And sometimes I need to learn from other places, whereas other people may need to learn differently. Like we all have a unique element that's maybe stronger or weaker. So each person is unique, and recognizing what one person may need may be different from what another is. And never making the assumption based on our projections of our own needs on others. Even as a therapist, that's something that I had to learn, like really listening and trying to observe what do they really need, you know? So.
Totally agree, Evie. Absolutely.
All right, ladies, I want to thank both of you for coming on to Black Earth Productions. Real quick before we wrap things up, if both of you could share with people your website, how to get a hold of you if they want to make contact.
For me, it's evelorgan.com or alienlovebite.com, my website, and have articles and links to interviews and different things. And both my books, Dark Side of Cupid and The Love Bite, are on Amazon, available hard copy and Kindle. My email is available through my website contact form. Sometimes it takes time for me to respond, but always go to my website, and that's easy enough.
For me, my website is sovereignki.com. My YouTube is Sovereign Key. And you can reach me through my website as well, or at sovereignkeys, KEES, @gmail.com, or at iamsovereignkey@gmail.com. And like Evie, it might take me a little while to get back. We're both backlogged. We're doing the best we can. So, yeah. You can always reach me through my website and through the emails.
Yeah, Facebook is a fucking swamp. I'm on there not that often. But to go ahead and plug myself for things on your end, if people want to get a hold of me, send me an email at blackearthproductions@hotmail.com. Please check out the website at blackearthproductions.com. Check out our services page. Now, real quick, what I'm doing is initiating people into the occult for real, giving them the Bible proper knowledge that they need to be able to discover who they are. Again, getting into the mechanics, getting into the psyche, getting into the mind, all these things that we talked about. Two of the protocol teachings I have on Black Earth Productions that I really encourage people to check out are Drawing the Circle of the Magician and The Cosmic Law of Alchemy. Those two videos are protocol in context. And watch those videos and actually start to apply these things to your life. Individuals that have, all of my students are starting to awaken even more themselves, messaging me, blowing my fucking mind, really bringing this back together. So again, I just want to thank you for doing this with me today.
Thank you, SETHIKUS. It's been wonderful. So,
Okay.
Evie, yeah, you're good?
All the Nick rules.